We're back on the wind-up talking all things SEC baseball. 9 weekends of conference play are in the books. There's just one weekend remaining as we look back on all the action that was. I'm joined by my good friend Harrison Fant, as I always am here on the wind-up. Harrison, what's going on, man? Crazy to think. The regular season, the end of it, right there in our sights. We got a lot of baseball to break down here as we get ready for postseason, Hoover, etc. But how you been, my man? Appreciate you taking the time as always.
Chris, good to be here. We've had an incredible season, a lot of great games, series, and just players to watch all season long. And it's crazy how fast it's flown by. I got one regular season week left in the SEC and then postseason. I know we're both excited for that.
Thursday through Saturday this week, folks, in case you forgot, as teams get ready for Hoover, Alabama, in the SEC tournament. But again, a jam-packed weekend from this previous weekend as teams continue to fight for their postseason lives. They fight for their right to host. They fight for top 8 national seeds. We got a lot of things on the line, Harrison. Let's dive into it as we start with the series that took place down in Fayetteville, Arkansas. This was a damn good one, right? As we, Harrison, we're going away from traditional conferences or from the traditional divisions, I should say, within conferences. There'll be no more East and West next year, which is strange. And it's unfortunate because you see a series like this, and every single year, Arkansas and Mississippi State, and of course LSU and Ole Miss and Auburn and all the others, Texas A&M, play against each other. One series that I hope does not go away, that we see on a year-in, year-out basis, is this Arkansas-Mississippi State series, because what you saw this past weekend is typically what we get, a game that goes down to the rubber match, a really fun Sunday rubber match. As Arkansas looked like they were in the hole. I thought, Harrison, admittedly, Mississippi State was going to find a way to get the job done. The Hogs reel off 9 runs. They've now won 9 straight SEC home series, 21 of the last 22 SEC series since 2019. I mean, again, this one was a lot of fun. Arkansas takes 2 of 3. When you look back at this one, surprise, surprise, Hagen Smith was Hagen Smith. Mississippi State, though, Harrison, I thought what jumped out, the way they tattooed Hogs pitching Saturday and Sunday. What jumped out to you most? A lot of things to take away from this weekend in Fayetteville.
Yeah, Chris, and it's one of those things that Arkansas is one of the best teams in the country playing at home. And for Mississippi State to go on the road and play how they did and attack Arkansas's pitching in the way that they did was just incredible to watch. It was the perfect way to go about it. They were aggressive early in the counts on their pitches and pitches in the zones, but also they were so patient. They drew a ton of walks, and they did so all weekend. It's just a combination of that, a lot of great at-bats, good pieces of hitting. It resulted in a lot of hits and a lot of runs in the series, which I think Mississippi State absolutely should have won, no doubt.
And you look back at this, and like you mentioned, they could have swept. I mean, Mississippi State very easily.
They should have swept.
Yeah, they should have swept.
I picked Arkansas, they should have swept.
Yeah, it was right there. It's funny. I mentioned Hagen Smith doing Hagen Smith things, and he had 11 strikeouts, but Mississippi State kind of proved Hagen Smith is mortal. Harrison, I mean, 5 innings pitched, 4 hits, 3 earned. He had 4 walks, again, 11 strikeouts. So, I mean, the stuff was still really good. But give credit to Mississippi State in this lineup, man. Hunter Hines, Dakota Jordan, they were really good all weekend. Mississippi State continues to pitch really, really well in game 2s. I feel like game 2s with Jurangelo St. John on the mound, they pitch really, really well. And then again, I think you have to give the credit to Arkansas in that game 3, that rubber match, for fighting back, scoring 9 unanswered. Mason Molina gets knocked out of this game in the first inning. He threw just 1 innings pitched, 4 earned runs. So they're behind the 8 ball. Kudos. All we've been hearing lately, at least, Harrison, was Arkansas does not have the bats, right? They can't swing it. They got to rely on pitching. To score 9 unanswered runs, I think that Sunday win might be a little bit bigger than we're even giving credit. Like, if Arkansas goes on a run, the hitting starts to figure itself out, we may look back at that Sunday game as sort of the turning point for the Hogs offensively, because nobody doubts they have the pitching. If they can get the sticks rolling like that, they're going to be a tough out this postseason.
Yeah, Chris, and we talked about it. We looked at the stats too. Arkansas is so much better of a team hitting at home than they are away, and that's going to be huge for them the rest of the way. But luckily, with how good they've been this season and being a national seed and what they'll be hosting a regional, and if they advance past that, a super regional, they're going to be playing a lot of home games. So that's great for them and how great they've been at home. They've lost 3 games at home now, I think, or 4. It's unbelievable. And so you got to give credit, though, to Mississippi State on all fronts. Pitching, like you said, I think Jurangelo St. John he only went just over 4 innings and wasn't striking out guys, only 1 strikeout, but he was keeping guys off balance. He was doing his job, getting a lot of ground balls. The defense was playing well behind him. But then Cal Stevens, game 1, 2, 7 innings, he goes 6 Ks, no walks. I mean, he spread out a bunch of hits. He gave up 4 runs, but on a couple elevated heaters, he tried to get out of the zone. They ended up being home runs. But just Mississippi State's pitching, and I've been watching a lot more closely the past couple weeks, and just how much I've really appreciated and loved how they've attacked hitters and just gone about their business on the mound. And then you talk about the lineup, right? Hunter Hines, he's the heart and soul. We talk about that of the Mississippi State team and the offense. And he had an incredible game 1. And then game 2 and game 3, it's other guys around him. Dakota Jordan, one of the best hitters and athletes in the SEC. He's a high strikeout rate, but he had Opera home run for his 17th of the year. You have Monty Larry, you got Logan Kohler at a home run too. It's a lot of guys in that lineup. It's getting a lot deeper, and the guys are stepping up and have really grown throughout the season. It's just been fantastic to watch them, but you can't dismiss the 9 unanswered runs in SEC play in a rubber match on Sunday. Like you said, it's unbelievable, especially from an offense like Arkansas. Is not an offense that's kind of like a A&M or a Tennessee, but that's just huge. And I think that's gonna be a big momentum for them. I mean, they scored several runs on big mistake pitches from pitchers. 3 separate 2-run home runs that put them in good hands, and just really they put the ball in play. Good things happen when you do that, and you and I both know that. But the thing that worries me, Chris, is just the pitching for Arkansas now, which we never would have thought. We never would have thought about that coming into the season. You and I both talked about it. I wrote an article about how Arkansas has the best starting rotation in college baseball. Maybe that's not the case anymore. It's
they're slumping badly,
and at the wrong time too. Badly. It's the wrong time. I mean, Brady Tygart struggled. Game 2, they had 10 walks, Arkansas. I mean, combining Brady Tygart and Mason Molina's outings, neither one of them got past the second inning. It was just wild to think. I mean, 7 earned runs, I think, combined between both of them, almost 10 hits. It's not what you want as a Razorback fan, and at the absolute worst time for sure.
Harrison, on the bright side, I would say, you've seen these guys pitch well. So it's not like you're trying to bank on some guys that, we don't know what we're going to get or if they're capable of pitching at a high level. To your point, the hot, cold, hot theory we talked about before, there's such a thing, even for pitchers, is going cold, going hot, whatever it might be. And, at times it feels like it's so easy to miss barrels. At others, it's you just feel like you're throwing BP. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys bounce back because, again, they've got the stuff. They've got the talent. Nobody's denying that. But certainly it's a rotation that we never would have expected has gone ice cold. And again, there's a couple of ways you can look at it. I think Harrison too, though, for the sticks to be able to pick them up, that's not something I was sure Arkansas could do. So to see them do it, and their fate, by the way, is secure. They're going to be a top 8 national seed. For Mississippi State, and we talked about this last week, Harrison, the value of playing at home, why it's such a big deal, why it's so important. I mean, I think if this series is in the Dude, much different. This is a much different.
I would have picked Mississippi State at the Dude,
right?
For sure.
It's a much you feel.
I almost picked them here.
Yeah, you feel confident they would have found a way to get the job done. I still feel confident in saying they would have. State now at 15-12. They're right there on that hosting bubble. So going to be important because I think if they can get postseason baseball at the Dude, not saying they can't go on the road and win, but you give me a postseason Dude that's rocking, right? I feel really confident
with their resume.
State, with their resume, and I think they're not going to go winless in the final weekend. I do want to highlight this, Harrison. You point this out, and I heard this on the broadcast actually Sunday as well. Arkansas has not lost to Mississippi State and Fayetteville. State was going for their first series win in Fayetteville since 2007. And Arkansas 13-2 against Mississippi State with 5 straight series wins since 2019. So it's always a wildly competitive series for sure, but the Hogs certainly have had the upper hand of late.
And that's a lot of years that Mississippi State's been good.
Very good.
Last year, that's
very
a lot
good.
of,
yes.
That's during a national championship year. But for Arkansas, one more point to make on your kind of worries about hitting versus pitching. I'd honestly a little bit rather have this if I'm a Razorbacks fan. The bats are heating up. Guys like Hudson White, who hit a home run in game 2, I believe, his first home run since opening weekend. And he was just a huge part of the offense there. And he had a home run in game 3 as well. Game tying 2-run home run in the 6th. You know what you're getting out of the pitching, and you know it can bounce back in an outing. But for have the bats heat up, I think that's huge because when both of those click in a line, they're a force to reckon with in the SEC in the postseason and maybe in Omaha.
both these clubs, I think, certainly could factor into that conversation. Going to be fun to watch both navigate, and especially on that Mississippi State side, we'll see if they can stay hot and playing good baseball. And certainly, if they get postseason baseball at the Dude,
I might have to show up.
All bets are off. All bets are off. Let's move to this one, Harrison. Columbia, South Carolina. I got something to say here today. South Carolina, Georgia. The Georgia Bulldogs go into Columbia, not just win a series, Harrison, not just sweep. They whooped South Carolina's ass from start to finish. A 14-10 slugfest in game one. Really, this was a slugfest all weekend. Both of these pitching staffs, neither one of them all respected Georgia. They're a fantastic story. The pitching staff is the question. Neither pitching staff is dominant. That's putting it lightly. 14-10 was scored in game one, 11-5 in game two, 14-6 in game three. Georgia wins all three games. A 9-game winning streak now for Georgia. Charlie Condon hits his 34th bomb in game one. 8th straight game with a home run. Needless to say, the Dogs are red hot. Give them their credit. Let's give them their roses first. 10% on the South Carolina side. I got a lot to say. We'll get into in a second. But you look at this Georgia club. All of a sudden, Harrison, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about, are the Dogs going to get in? Now, they're maybe the hottest team in college baseball, and we're talking about postseason baseball at Foley Field. How impressed are you with what we've seen from Georgia here of late?
Chris, I'm really impressed, and it's one of those things that you can say it's based off primarily Wes Johnson being his first year and just the expectations that everyone that covers college baseball had for Georgia this year. But it's also the development of the team and the offense, especially outside of Charlie Condon, how guys have stepped up. I'm going to go ahead and say it now. I think Georgia has one of the top 2 1-2 hole hitters in the SEC. I think it's neck and neck with Christian Moore and Blake Burke at Tennessee. You look at Corey Collins and having Charlie Condon, it's unbelievable. And they're both just elite, and they've both gotten better. We obviously know how good Charlie Condon has gotten. But, I mean, in the leadoff spot, he's been so good, Corey Collins. He leads the SEC in hit by pitches with 24, which – dude's a ball magnet, first off. He leads the SEC on base percentage at almost 600. And then you have Charlie Condon, who leads the country in home runs at 34, batting average at 454, slugging at 1.082. That's slugging, not on base percent, on base plus slugging. His OPS is 1650. It's unbelievable. And just to face that 1-2 punch at the top of the lineup every time, they're going to get 3, 4, maybe 5 at bats. 6 in this weekend's case. It's unbelievable how good they are, and just I think one of the best duos, 1-2 in the order in the SEC.
Harrison Hagen-Smith's a fantastic player. Jack Caglione, the Bazzana kid from Oregon State. It feels like they're all looking up at Charlie Condon, the eventual winner of the Golden Spikes. No, and I feel like it's hands down. It's got to be Charlie Condon's award at this point. For me, it's between Charlie Condon and Jack Caglione for obvious reasons. Just the two-way player that he is, and the ability in success he's had to be doing it both ways. Yes, the walks have been up for Jack, but to be able to do that week in and week out in the SEC is unbelievable. But Charlie Condon, I think, just has that little bit of an edge on him. Just consistency in the bats and how he's been doing it all season. It wasn't like a early, SEC plays, he kind of dips and then just kind of been rising back up. It's been consistent all season long, and it's just unbelievable to watch. Fantastic story we've talked about. It's coming on as preferred walk-on, redshirting, just humble kid from everything I've seen and heard and watched in person. It's got to be Charlie Condon's at this point, unless something unbelievable happens the rest of the season. And Harrison, we just mentioned that at this point in the season, right, the games are winding down. We got just one regular season weekend to go. This is sort of where you are solidifying where you're going to be in the postseason. Are you on the road? Are you hosting? Are you a top 8 national seed? Are you missing out completely? A pair of programs in Georgia and South Carolina after this past weekend especially trending in completely opposite directions, right? You've got the Georgia Bulldogs, who I just mentioned a couple weeks ago. We were talking about Harrison. Oh, this is a cute story. Maybe they'll get in the postseason. Now we're talking about them hosting postseason baseball at Foley Field. A couple weeks ago, South Carolina was in every single postseason projection, hosting at Founders Park. I would say those efforts are on life support at this point. The hosting hopes of South Carolina now sitting after getting swept with 13 SEC wins, 13 and 14 on a road trip to Knoxville upcoming. Harrison, let me say this. Let me go ahead and get this out there. I'm going to take you back to a time, 2022. I call for the firing of Mark Kingston. A disaster season for South Carolina. Thought it was time then the Gamecocks did not make the move. Whatever. Mark Kingston, to his credit, went to the transfer portal hard, went and got Monty Lee, the assistant coach, right, from Clemson, was the former head coach last year. Bounce back season. Yes, they crumbled down the stretch, but Ethan Petrie was fantastic. The pitching staff was pretty good. Postseason baseball at Founders, and you saw South Carolina get to the Gainesville Super Regional against Florida. We all knew, those that follow SEC baseball, those that follow Gamecocks baseball, you knew it was an important year for the future of that program and the future of Mark Kingston. Harrison, it's time. It's time, man. It's time for South Carolina to cut ties. The Mark Kingston era is over. It should be over. It should have been over 2 years ago. Let's call it for what it is. It's time for South Carolina to go a different direction. And I know that Gamecock fans and Gamecock folks, you know, they almost get criticized, Harrison, to a degree, because the expectations for the program are so high. And there's a number of SEC programs where you can say that, like, hey, guys, you can't make Omaha every year. But it's been over a decade. And Harrison, realistically, when you look at the program, I don't care if you're a fan, I don't care if you're an unbiased third-party observer, I don't care if you're an analyst. When you look at that program, you cannot tell me that program is getting closer. They're trending in the direction of being an Omaha contender. You cannot tell me that. It has been the same old for them since he took the job. It's been this up and down, wallowing in mediocrity for 7 years, 6 seasons, because, of course, there was no season in 2020. Harrison, it goes without saying, it's time for South Carolina baseball to make a change. Barring some miracle run this postseason to Omaha, which I don't think is happening. I mean, the Gamecocks, they could still miss the postseason. They got to be careful of that, sitting at 13 SEC wins with a trip to Tennessee upcoming, and then the SEC tournament where, oh, by the way, the program has historically been terrible in Hoover. I think it's time, Harrison. It's time for South Carolina baseball to make a change, to go out. I don't know who the answer is. I don't know who the guy is, but it's time for South Carolina to begin repairing what once a really proud program and start working to getting the program back to what it once was. And I'm not saying winning back-to-back national championships. I'm not saying going to 3 straight national titles, but getting this program back to a point where it is realistically in the conversation of the upper tier of the SEC and competing for trips to Omaha. Because what we've seen over the last 7 years, the standard has been lost in Columbia. And it goes without saying, and it's time for a change.
Chris, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's one of those things that the standard in Columbia is at minimum super regionals, especially after the 2010s and how successful the program was under Ray Tanner, and just back-to-back national championships, almost winning 3 in a row. It's just in the SEC with any fan base in any sport, it's kind of like that. Once you strike gold, it's like, this is our standard now. And that's just not where South Carolina has been since then, really. They had their best shot, like you said, when they lost in the Florida Super Regional in Gainesville. And it's just never been able to get over that hump. And that's just not sitting well with fans and the direction of the program and what the standard is. And so it's tough. It's tough because that's what you strive for, everyone and every team, but as fans to watch and just kind of expect when you see that historically. I mean, I'm going to compare it to the 95 Braves. When you see that dominance and you see how good and just the standard of what that franchise or program is, that's what you expect going forward. It's hard to do that in the SEC, let alone any team in the country, but it's just a tough situation.
It's really sad, honestly, because this is a program, a once very proud program that, you know, you look over the history, and I mean, even before Ray Tanner, but certainly Ray Tanner's run, I mean, those of us that, you know, were born in the 90s, growing up with South Carolina baseball in the early 2000s, like, all you know is winning. And winning at a high level and you know, being ranked the top 25 and being in the conversation of, you know, winning the division or winning the conference, like, that was a given. Like, being a top 10 program was a given. And so, you know, there are times where you call for change at the top. You call for a coach's firing where it's met with some resistance. It's met with some debate. It's met with some banter. Like, making the move on Mark Kingston for South Carolina, it is the most no-brainer, obvious move of all time. And anyone who would argue against it doesn't remember what South Carolina baseball is supposed to look like. They don't know what Gamecocks baseball is supposed to be. And every year that passes, South Carolina's in trouble of, hey, 2010 and 2011 are only getting further away. And you all of a sudden, the new norm becomes being what you've been, which is painfully average, mediocre, and being middle of the pack. I think South Carolina, we're going to learn a lot about their commitment to winning. I think we're going to learn a lot about how much do they really care about winning in the sport of baseball when this offseason approaches. Because whether they do or don't make a move, it'll tell you everything you need to know about that program, that administration, and that university when it comes to is winning really the main thing. And I'll leave it at that, Harrison. I'll leave it at that.
You got to think about the homegrown talent in the Carolinas and just looking back when the most successful years of South Carolina's program history, probably in the early 2010s, and just how that was the standard, that was the pinnacle of where you wanted to go and everything. That's not really the case anymore, it feels like. I mean, you look at this team this year, in the past couple of years, it's been, especially this year, it's a lot of transfer guys playing, a lot of guys that came in, not a lot of guys that have been through the program 2, 3, 4 years, and those veterans and stuff. I mean, I think most of the seniors that were recognized this past weekend were all but one, I think, were transfers. I think that definitely need to take into account, let alone the style of the transfer portal in the landscape of college baseball. I think you have to take that into account.
There's no development in the program. And again, Harrison, we could spend hours on this, obviously, but I mean, you look back over the last couple of years and you talk to people who have been around Gamecocks baseball. To your point, there's no development in the program. They have, Ethan Petrie they stumbled upon a gold mine in him. Hell, he's gotten worse. Ethan Petrie's gotten worse. There's no development.
This season a bit. It's been tough. I hate it for him.
There's no development within the program. The problems are obvious. I mean, again, it's very clear where I stand, Harrison, and it's going to be interesting to see what South Carolina does for sure. Again, we could spend all day on this, but let's move on. Fun series down in Gainesville, Harrison. The Kentucky Wildcats, third-ranked Kentucky Wildcats, they stay red hot. A pair of extra inning wins for the Cats, 12-11 in game 1 in 10 innings. Game 2, Florida bounces back big, 10-1, but the final game, 7-5. Kentucky holds on in 10 innings, gets the dub. Florida struggles continue. You mentioned Jack Caglione. He was really good on Sunday, 6 1/3, 2 hits, 3 runs, 1 earned. But I think, Harrison, the big story from this weekend, Kentucky's fine, right? They're going to be a top 8 national seed. Their focus is on winning the SEC as a whole. A conversation, Harrison, will have more in a second later in the show. But the Florida Gators now 11-16 in conference play, 26-25 overall. And this just happened, Harrison, while we are on air. Florida is not going to add a game this week. I think there was some talk that Florida might try to add a midweek.
Because they had so many rainouts.
Right. Well, they are not doing that. So Florida is on the verge of being left out. I think, Harrison, it's probably going to take a big closing weekend. They've got the Georgia Bulldogs, by the way.
On the road.
Yeah, on the road. Need to win that series. Need to make noise in Hoover and then pray, really, truly. Thoughts on this series, but also really thoughts on the bigger picture of Kentucky and Florida.
Yeah, Chris. So to kind of harp on the not adding an extra game, I know Kevin O'Sullivan there was words and I guess quotes from him about, do I really want to call up some, mid-major D1s and stuff like that, like, Florida A&M and call and say, hey, like, we need you to come play us, like, just so, get a huge win. I mean, I don't know if that's really a comfortable feeling as a coach. I don't care how long you've been coaching. It's just such an odd feeling. It's an unfortunate thing for Florida because of how many games they've had canceled and just not the success they've had this season that they expected and with the talent they've had and just a lot of stumbling and not a lot of winning at home as much as they have been historically. But to answer your question about the bigger picture, Kevin O'Sullivan talked a lot about this program. He said he's been saying a lot this year. I don't know what else to say at this point. There's no long speeches. They know what's at stake. And I think they win this weekend kind of backs against the wall. And yeah, they lost the series. They easily should have won the series, let alone they could have swept the series at home, which would have been massive for them and huge momentum for them going into the last week in the season at Georgia and then in the SEC tournament. I mean, it's a desperation weekend for Florida, but I think they played very, very well against a very good Kentucky team as a whole, but on the road too. I mean, the struggles behind the pitching of Florida have been there all year. The bats have been their kind of MO the whole season. And just, I think they went slugfest. They went bat for bat, pitch for pitch with Kentucky all weekend. One of the top teams in the country. I mean, Kentucky's projected to be the number 1 national seed, and they're number 2 in the rankings right now, which we'll get into that later. But I have some issues with that. But it's just, I think you saw a lot of fight, a lot of grit from a lot of different guys on Florida, and I really, really liked it. I mean, don't be surprised if they go on a run in Hoover. I'm going to say it right now. Don't be surprised if Florida and Kevin O'Sullivan, with the experience he has, he spent 9 years at Clemson, 17 years at Florida, and outside of COVID, he's been in the postseason 25 straight years. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. I mean, they have everything they need to go to the postseason run, and I expect them to get in the postseason, the 3 seed. Whoever is hosting that regional is going to hate the committee and hate having Florida in as a 3 seed. And Florida's going to be like, we don't have anything to lose. All we have to gain, 0-0 record in the postseason. And they're going to probably potentially go on to do what Ole Miss did and go on to run the postseason.
Harrison, I'm going to take the opposite stance of you on LSU and Florida because, do they both have, and I know we're talking Florida here, but I feel like these are almost one and the same situations.
Yeah.
Do they both have really, really good individual players? Yes, they do. Florida obviously does. They got one of the best players, if not the best, in college baseball in Jack Caglione. But at some point, and it's been 9 conference weekends, like at some point, you can have all the talented individuals you want. You're not a good team. Florida's just not a good team. They're just not. They're not a good team. And maybe this will be the comment that sparks some run, right? I just mentioned the whole Mark Kingston thing, by the way, with South Carolina. I called for Chris Lemonis to be fired, and look what they did this season. That was early, back in like mid-February, late February. So maybe this comment helps Florida baseball. But at some point, I have to look at you and say, you do have individual pieces that are talented. And I mean, I think Kevin O'Sullivan, you put his comments in here in the notes. Harrison, I read these comments, his post-game comments, mesh to the team. I think that's his takeaway. It doesn't make a lot of sense because there's talented individual pieces, but you're just not a good team. You're just not a good team. And it's hard to make sense of because you look at the individual pieces and it doesn't make sense, but they're just not a good team. They're just not a good team. So I understand, like, it's a really fun convo to talk about, man, Florida or LSU, they're going to be hell in somebody's regional to 3 seed. And maybe one of them will, and we give the benefit of the doubt because we're SEC Unfiltered, we're SEC, but like at some point I'm like, is it going to be a nightmare? Because neither one of these teams is worth a shit. Like, just call it for what it is, man. I don't know. I'll be very intrigued to see what both do, but Florida needs to worry about just making the postseason before they worry about, being a headache as a 3 seed in somebody's regional. That's all I'm saying.
Because, I think the best way to put it, and I'll leave it at this, is Florida is the most talented, inconsistent team in the country.
Okay.
Most talented, inconsistent
I'll give you
team in
that.
the country.
I'll give you that. That's fair.
With elite coaching.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's been shocking. It's been a shocking season. I thought Florida was going to, I picked Tennessee to win the SEC East, by the way, but I thought Florida was going to be right there at 2 or 3 to see what they've done, obviously. But again, kudos to Kentucky. We still probably don't talk about Kentucky enough. It's incredible what they're doing right now. I cannot wait to see them in the postseason at Kentucky Proud Park, like you mentioned, could be the number 1 overall national seed. Again, Florida, they did a big run in Hoover. Speaking of Hoover, Harrison, our friends over at SeatGeek, they're going to help you get to Hoover. Head over to SeatGeek.com. They got all the tickets you need for the entire week in Hoover, Alabama. Use promo code SECU, $20 off your first purchase. Whether you want to go to the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday games, you want to go to the semifinals, you want to go to the championship, SeatGeek can hook you up. That's our friends over at SeatGeek.com, or download the app. And again, use promo code SECU at checkout. $20 off. Guys, you can get some beers, you can get some hot dogs, whatever you want to do. We could all use $20 extra in our pocket. We're giving you that with promo code SECU over at SeatGeek on your first purchase. So, guys, I'll tell you a secret. If you want to use it multiple times, just create a new account. You can use the promo code. You can keep getting $20 off. So, trying to help you out. Again, if you're heading to Hoover, college football, whatever it might be, MLB, promo code SECU over at SeatGeek.com. Yeah, Harrison, go ahead with the Florida Gators. You got something on Florida in regards to Hoover, in regards to postseason? What do you got?
Yeah, and in regards to just the series with Kentucky and like leading up to Hoover, I think we got to give Jack Caglione praise for his entire season, the body of work he's done, just the athlete and the player he has been. In Sunday game 3, to be able to hit all weekend, and then go out there Sunday and start on the mound and be your team's best pitcher. They've lost, 2 games now, including this game 3, when he's started on the mound, I believe. Unbelievable in the SEC. And just he had his last outing at Condren Ballpark in front of all the Florida fans, right? Strikeout to end his outing with a 3-2 changeup, a beautiful changeup. His best pitch, I think, by far, that's really developed this year. And Kevin O'Sullivan's harped on it too, about how great he's gotten, how advanced his changeup has developed throughout the season. He walked off the mound his last time at home, standing ovation in front of the crowd, and 100% rightfully so. Just, he is one of the best players in Florida Gators baseball history, I believe. And I went through it and looked at the rankings. I mean, my top 5 Florida Gators in the history of the program: Brad Wilkinson, outfielder, 96 through 98. He was a 2-way. Undoubtedly the best player, I think, in Florida baseball history. Mike Zunino, catcher, 2010 to 2012. Logan Shore, starting pitcher, 14 through 16. Jack Caglione, 2-way first baseman, starting pitcher, 22 through 24. And then Pat Osmond, utility and relief pitcher in 2000 through 2002. I think he led the team in the SEC in saves, I believe. But top 5 player in Florida Gator baseball history. And it's unfortunate that Florida hasn't had the season in which they had last year with the talent they have in this year's roster. But I think we had to give Jack his praise one more time. But to give more light on Kentucky in going on the road against, yes, a struggling Florida team, but a really good Florida team when they want to be, they intentionally walked Jack 4 times in one game, Chris. 4 times. He goes, unbelievable. Game 2, he goes 1 for 2, 4 intentional walks after hitting a double. And then in the 8th inning, they have to pitch to him, bases loaded in a close game. And he gets them to strike out on an elevated 0-2 heater. It's frustrating, but Jack Caglione, the story of him, I think, is getting overshadowed by how good and just incredible story Charlie Condon. But he's got a 30-game on-base streak. He tied the record for, I think he's got on base 49 of 51 games this season for Florida. It's just unbelievable to think about. I mean, he's gotten on every single game except 2, which breaks up 2 huge streaks. He leads the NCAA. He holds the NCAA record for most consecutive games with a home run with 9. And he's got a current 29-game hit streak. It's just unbelievable. But the pitching for Kentucky, you saw it again, struggled really with Dominic Niemann again. It's been rough for him against SEC pitching, and you tweeted about it. It's 7 hits, 6 earned in 4 innings, and leaving a lot of fastballs up, breaking balls over the plate, not down enough. And Kentucky's pitching is kind of trending the way Arkansas is right now. It's but their offense is significantly better. Just to state that for sure. But the pitching trending down this is not the time you want to do it. And that's where the concerns, I think, lie for Kentucky, because their offense is stacked. I mean, it's unbelievable. Ryan Nicholson, just Nick Lopez, Amelia Petrie, and just unbelievable lineup. But I think the pitching is where Kentucky's going to see how far their team takes them as they're pitching.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see how the Cats come along. And to your point, Jack Caglione deserves better. Jack Caglione, that's the biggest takeaway.
Florida should have won this series. They should have won game 1 and game 3. Game 3, they misplayed a ball over center field or left field. Tyler Shannon's had 3-run score, and they're losing. Yeah,
it's unfortunate because I'll say this: I hope Florida makes the postseason because I'd love to watch more of Jack Caglione, and it's going to be really unfortunate if his season.
I'm excited to see him in person.
Yeah, it's going to be unfortunate if his season ends in Hoover. I'll just say that. Let's move to this one. Texas A&M Ole Miss. This was, I think, the big upset of the weekend, Harrison. The Ole Miss Rebels at Swayze. Hey, beer showers were happening. Find a way
Swayze
to
Crazies.
3. The Swayze Crazies really sparked a dominant pitching staff. They win game 1 4-3. Ole Miss wins game 2 10-2. A&M does salvage game 3, so give them credit. Your thoughts on a big upset? I mean, I think this was one that kind of got brushed under the rug a little bit because maybe there were some other bigger performances. But let me ask you this. Do you draw any concern for A&M at all from this weekend, or is it just the results of going to Swayze and Ole Miss finding a spark?
Yeah, Chris, I think when you look at the bigger picture for A&M, just how hot they've been building up throughout the season, maybe they got hot too quick. Some could think of it that way or look at it that way. But it's also, I think, a trap game for them, right? It's a trap series because they go into Swayze on the road, a hostile SEC environment. No matter how good or bad Ole Miss is, Swayze is a tough place to play. And winning on the road in the SEC is even harder because they have Arkansas next week at home. 2 of the top 5 teams in the country going head-to-head. And whoever wins that should probably be the top 1 or 2 seed in national seeds in the postseason, let alone win the SEC probably. And so maybe it was a trap weekend for them. But the biggest concerns for me, Chris, lie in the pitching after Ryan Prager. I mean, Prager gives you a great start again. He goes just over 5 innings, 5 hits, 2 earned, 10 Ks, 1 walk. He's been dominant all season. So a lot of props for him. I think we need to give him more appreciation for the body of work he's created throughout the season, let alone his 30 inning hitless or scoreless streak he had that Jack Caglione broke up in that first SEC series of the season. But the behind them, it's been a really struggle on the mound. It's been tough to see. Like Justin Lampkin, he didn't get out of the second inning. 4 hits, 5 earned, 1 walk or 1 strikeout, no walks. It's just, and then Chris Cortez, their best reliever, I think has some of the best stuff in the SEC in the country. He's got a 98 mile an hour fastball and then like a 94 mile an hour, 92 mile an hour, like split sinker. It's not a Paul Skeens splinker, but it's like a sinker. It's 94, 92. It's ridiculous. He got touched up for 4 earned runs. I mean, a couple of walks, wild pitch. It's just, it's tough. But then A&M in game 3, Shane Sado, I think is how you pronounce his name. Unbelievable start. I mean, his second start of the year, to go do that on the road in the SEC, your second start and go 7 innings, 3 hits, 6 Ks against the team that's been mashing off you the past 2 games, and just be able to go win one on the road, salvage one on the road. We talk about that all the time, right? Salvaging one on the road and try to win a series on the road, obviously. But his slider was unbelievable, Chris. The amount of horizontal movement and the vertical depth that it had was unbelievable. And it's just his best pitch by far. But props to him for doing that in his second start in the season on the road in front of Swayze Crazies, needing to salvage games. So a lot of props to him.
Back-to-back series losses to unranked teams for the Texas.
Not the direction you want to go.
Yeah, it's interesting to see these teams heat up or cool down as we get closer to the end of the season. And again, the time, Harrison, that you don't want to be sliding.
I mean, how do you feel about it?
I'm not worried about A&M. I'm not worried about them. I think, again, going on the road in the SEC is still really, really difficult. To your point, as long as you don't get swept. I mean, you don't call losing 2 of 3 a success. But yeah, I mean, you don't call it a success necessarily. But, I mean, listen, it's tough, and it happens. And everybody in this conference takes their licks at some point. And Texas A&M, that's exactly what happens. So I think they're going to be fine. To your point, you don't like to see the pitching struggle. I think of it this way, though. As the weather starts to warm up and the ball's flying around and hitters are feeling good. And, I'm not surprised to see some of the offensive outputs we're seeing. But I think Texas A&M is going to be fine. That series this weekend, like you mentioned, A&M and Arkansas, that's going to be electric. I can't wait to watch that, all 3 games. Of course, we got the SEC regular season title on the line, which we're going to get into in just a moment after we talk about the number 1 Tennessee Volunteers. How about a rivalry series? They go on the road to Vandy, take 2 of 3, had a chance at the sweep on Sunday, but could not get it done. Vandy wins that ball game 3-0. Again, Tennessee wins 8-4 and 7-6 games 1 and 2. Your thoughts, Haberson, on what I would call one of the best rivalries in college baseball. Unfortunately, Vandy is not very good this year, or, I say not very good. Been wildly inconsistent. They're 12-15 in conference play.
Good at home.
Good at home. Vandy, though, just still very, very hard to figure out. But Tennessee takes 2 of 3. And really, Vandy, again, to your point, Harrison, they had a chance to win this series. Vanderbilt's bullpen in game 1 was abysmal. 5 earned runs, the last 2 1/3 innings pitched. Your thoughts on the weekend that was for the Tennessee Volunteers, and also kind of a weekend of what could have been for Vandy?
Yeah, Chris. And I'll start with Tennessee. Just Tony Vitello just has a fantastic season leading these guys, and just to go on the road in a rivalry game at Vanderbilt's been very, very good at home, let alone their inconsistencies. Their pitching's been elite and very dominant at home with their starters. But to put up 8 runs, 7 runs the first 2 games is kind of where I expected them to be, just with how much offensive firepower and depth and consistency in which they had. But to do it against, I think more so the bullpen of Vanderbilt was a huge piece, because you knew the starters, Bryce Cunningham and Carter Holton in game 1 and 2, were going to have their best stuff, right? Another backs against the wall kind of situation with Vanderbilt being middle of the SEC, needing to kind of solidify their postseason role and where they're kind of be leading into the last regular season series. And Hoover, Bryce Cunningham really gives you a chance in game 1. I mean, 10 Ks in 6 2/3, 5 hits, 3 runs. I mean, he put a ton of guys away with everything was on. Slider down and out, changeup down and out, and down and into righties. Right on right slider, the most underrated pitch in baseball, I think. And then a lot of elevated fastballs. But he did give up a leadoff home run to Christian Moore, who had another one. It's just unbelievable. I mean, how good and powerful he is in the leadoff role.
Tennessee's offense is electric. Their offense is electric. They're so much
it's
fun
consistently electric and
Yeah.
deep. Deep. That's the biggest thing. But then game 2, Carter Holton goes 5 innings, spreads out 7 hits, only allowing 1 earned run, 2 runs, 7 Ks, 1 walk. Did a great job of keeping guys off balance. Gives you another chance to go out there late in the game and win the ball game. And it's just, I mean, not enough production out of, for Vanderbilt. The offense is what lost them this series. Not enough production out of the 1 through 5 holes in any of the games, really. I mean, game 3 was a little bit better, if you want to say that. I mean, only scored 3 runs, but in game 1, when you break it down, Chris, game 1, they had 1 hit, 0 RBIs, 6 Ks from the 1 through 5 hole in game 1. Those are your best hitters and your power hitters.
Hard to win when you do that. Hard to win.
Yeah. It's really, and then game 2 is the same thing. There's no really adjustment, which is the biggest thing. I mean, 3 hits, they had 2 RBIs, okay, 5 Ks, they had 5 walks, but when you have 5 walks, you only have 3 hits. You're not going to score a lot of runs, and that's the thing. And then, you know, Grayson Carter got tagged in the 6th, but I mean, just the offense that lost it. I mean, you still scored 6 runs, but no production from your 1 through 5 holes in 2 games. I mean, it just, that's how you're not going to win ball games. I mean, game 3, they had a little bit better, 5 hits, 3 RBIs. I mean, a lot of strikeouts still. It's tough. They're not getting any production out of the leadoff 3, 4, 5 hole guys, and it's what's losing them ball games in the SEC entirely. I mean, the pitching struggled on the road, but at home, they've been fantastic. J.D. Thompson pitched fantastic in game 3. I mean, 6 shutout innings against the best offense probably in the SEC, 9 Ks. I mean, unbelievable. So it's just, it's another sad thing with how talented they are.
I would just like to say that I sold stock on Vandy very early in the season. So, you know, whatever. They can't hit. Shocker to me. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's, you know, Tennessee.
I did buy some stock.
You did. I mean, again, to your point, though, to be fair, Vandy is another one of those SEC teams with a just losing conference record, just below 500 that, you know, they've got the talent, they've got the pieces. Can they put it together? That's the question mark. And Tennessee, by the way, had won 9 straight games in the series after game 2's win. Vanderbilt, I know they're thankful. You don't like to lose a series, but my goodness, snapping that streak, getting that monkey off your back, certainly one that I think the Commodores will be happy to get rid of a really, really nasty streak. So Tennessee stays hot. Of course, again, they stay right in the thick of the SEC title race. I want to talk to you about that, Harrison, but final 2 series we'll just kind of quickly touch on. Bama takes 2 of 3 from LSU. That one was in Tuscaloosa. And then, of course, Auburn takes 2 of 3 from Missouri. Brief thoughts on those 2 series. Did anything jump out to you? I mean, I don't think Auburn-Mizzou, there's a lot to talk about from that. But Bama, 2 of 3 from LSU. I think it's all but certain, barring a miracle run in Hoover, LSU's season is virtually over.
Yeah, I'll hit Auburn, Missouri real quick just because it's more brief. But it's tough for Auburn program that had a lot of high expectations coming into the season. But to go on the road in the SEC and take 2 or 3, just both teams fighting for not to be last place in the SEC. So props to them for that. But,
and I will say this, Harrison, I was asked about Butch Thompson and should Auburn make a move. That would be the worst thing Auburn baseball could do. Because Butch Thompson has done a phenomenal job there. I still believe in Butch Thompson. They've had a bad year, sure, but
that would be calling for a head coach.
That would be a terrible move, in my opinion. Terrible move.
Yeah, but to kind of recap LSU, Alabama, I mean, it's not on the gridiron. It's a little bit different of a rivalry, if you can say, but to win the series at home is huge. It's kind of LSU's, this is not what we expected of them, right? Especially after winning the national championship last year. Completely different team, a little bit different style. You lose Wes Johnson, the pitching coach, and I think that's a huge thing. I mean, yes, they had this incredible pitching lab where guys like Paul Skeens, who made his debut with the Pirates this past weekend, you lose your pitching coach in just the kind of caliber of a coach he is, and just knowledge and everything he has. And look what he's done. We're
seeing it this year. We're seeing it at Georgia.
We're seeing it in year 1 immediately in a program that doesn't have nearly the prestige that LSU does. I think that's a very underappreciated, undernoticed thing, but it's 2 kind of lower middle of the pack SEC teams fighting for placement right now, I guess, in Hoover and trying to keep those postseason hopes alive. So that's kind of what it is right now for them.
Yeah, I would say I think LSU's been even more disappointing than Florida. I know LSU lost a lot, but it's another team. It's another team like the Florida Gators that has all these pieces that they're just not a good team, and it's hard for some folks, I think, to come to grips with that, but they're just not. They're just not. And it's stunning to say the least. And again, I think their postseason hopes are all but on life support at this point. I mean, I think LSU right now would be the last team in to Hoover. They would be the 12th seed because Florida's sitting at 11th seed. Again, this is right now, so things can change. But LSU with 10 SEC wins, 10 and 17.
It's tough because they have a lot of just mature guys that have been in the program for a couple of years. It's not like they don't have that, or it's not like they have young guys that aren't stepping up. I mean, you see Georgia have young guys step up. I mean, you see freshman Trey Phillips have another unbelievable weekend. I think he had 4 home runs in the week, and he might win SEC Player of the Week. Just having those like key role players step up, like a Trey Phillips. I mean, just freshman DH, unbelievable. I mean, just Florida hasn't put the piece together, but LSU really hasn't put those pieces together either, or consistently, and just the pitching struggles.
So, Harrison, with that being said, there are 9 conference weekends in the books. It all comes down to this. Just 3 games remaining in the regular season of SEC conference play specifically. We've got 4 teams that realistically have a shot to call themselves SEC baseball regular season champions, and they are the following. Kentucky, who's sitting at 20-7, leading the pack. Then you've got Tennessee and Arkansas, both at 19-8, and Texas A&M is sitting at 17-10. Let me remind you, Arkansas and Texas A&M play each other. Kentucky has the Vanderbilt Commodores in Lexington, and Tennessee hosts the South Carolina Gamecocks. Harrison, I'll point blank ask you, does Kentucky hold on and get the job done, or do you see someone else making a run in the final weekend, taking advantage of maybe some of Kentucky's struggles and hoisting that crown as SEC regular season champions?
With a 1-game lead on Tennessee, I think honestly, I think Tennessee comes away and takes it just because they're playing at home and against a really struggling South Carolina team. Because like you said, Kentucky's going on the road at Vanderbilt.
No, Kentucky's got Vandy at home. I guess I'm asking you to make some predictions. I guess I'll ask you this. Maybe you don't have to predict, but like, would you take Kentucky or the field route? Like, what would you feel more if you had to bet on it right now? If you had to place
for the entire SEC
regular season champions, yes.
I'll take the field. I mean, just the odds with Arkansas and Tennessee. I mean, even though Arkansas's on the road, but I mean, A&M's, I think 3 games out, or 2 games, maybe 3. I'll take the field. I like my odds with that.
I'm going to roll with Kentucky. Big Blue Nation, I'm giving you some respect. I think Kentucky holds on. They get it done. I don't know that they sweep, but I think they'll take 2 or 3, and I think that'll be plenty enough. What's crazy too, Harrison, Kentucky, 20 SEC wins, and we're not even at the last weekend. That is crazy. Really puts in perspective how great of a season they've had this year.
Nick Mingione has done a fantastic job, and I mean, unbelievable job. Not even a fantastic job, just with this season, the turnaround, just not even the turnaround, but the turnaround of the program as a whole. I mean, last season, just the run they went on and going, I think losing a super regional, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah.
At Vanderbilt, I believe. Or it went on and lost it or won Vanderbilt's regional or something like that. And just to come back and do it again and just get better. And yeah, it's a feel-good story, but this is where they expected to be. It's just the talent and the kind of results that they win the season, not hoping for, but expecting. That's a big thing. And Mingione's just, he's been a fantastic hire for Kentucky. Absolutely.
Harrison, in closing, let's take a look at the latest top 25. We got Tennessee at 1, Kentucky at 2, Arkansas 3, Texas A&M in the 5 spot. Georgia cracks the top 10 at number 9. You then go to Mississippi State at 16, and South Carolina finds a way to stay in the top 25 at 24. Your thoughts? I know you had some beef with Tennessee being 1, Kentucky being 2.
Yeah, I just think full body work. Yes, Kentucky won the series head-to-head on the road, but just full body work, I think Kentucky is proven to be the number 1 team in the country overall. And when you look at D1 baseballs, that's their rankings. But when you look at their projected regional hosts for the postseason coming into last weekend, they have number 1 overall seed is Kentucky. Like I don't, it doesn't make sense. And you know who's number 3 national seed? Tennessee. The number 2 is A&M. So like what? I don't understand the inconsistency there. It doesn't. Make it make sense.
I think once you throw in RPI, strength of schedule, I think things get kind of out of whack. I think,
I mean, Kentucky is the number 1 RPI, the number 7 strength of
I'll give
schedule.
them.
They have 18 quad 1 wins.
I'm not doing a good job of making excuses for D1 baseball.
They're not. Tennessee is the number 6 RPI, the 25th strength of schedule, and 13 quad 1 wins.
Yeah. The beautiful thing is, Harrison, in a few weeks, none of these rankings will mean anything. So,
but while we're on it, Georgia is the number 3 RPI, number 8 strength of schedule, in 12 and 10 in quad 1.
Not bad. Not bad.
Just
it's so wild, too, to see. If you'd have told me the Georgia Bulldogs would be top 10 this point in the season, I would not have believed you. Crazy to think what Wes Johnson's done. Guys, that's going to do it all for us. Appreciate you all tuning in. Again, stay tuned to the windup, guys. We have big plans for the SEC tournament next week in Hoover. You can catch all the coverage at SECUnfiltered.com across social media right here as well. We're going to preview the thing. We're going to break it down. We're going to react to it. We're going to be on site, courtesy of our good friend Harrison here. So it's going to be a lot of fun in Hoover. And again, we got one regular season weekend remaining. So again, keep it tuned right here for all the latest from us. Guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon as well, so you get notifications of when we go live, when we drop new video content as well, guys. Also, check out the podcast wherever you get podcasts, all across social media, and, of course, our website, SECUnfiltered.com. For Harrison Fant, I'm Chris Phillips. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll catch you on the other side.